Most people think the reason they still feel broke is taxes, inflation, or the rising cost of living. But the truth is, you could double your salary tomorrow, and in 6 months, you'd likely feel exactly the same, financially suffocated. The problem isn't how much you're making. It's a silent psychological trap called lifestyle creep. Today, we're diving into why your brain is sabotaging your wealth and how to finally break the cycle. Picture this. It's a Tuesday evening somewhere in America. Maybe Dallas, maybe Columbus, maybe just outside of Atlanta. Someone is sitting at their kitchen table, looking at their phone, opening their bank app for the 4th time that week. Not because they forgot the number, but because they're hoping it changed. They make $78,000 a year. 3 years ago, they made $52,000 and thought, if I could just get to $75,000, everything would be easier. They got there, then they got past it. And somehow, looking at that account balance right now, they feel the exact same low-grade financial panic they felt back then. Maybe worse. That's not a unique story. That's happening to millions of people across this country right now. And if you've ever felt that specific mix of confusion and quiet shame, like you're earning a real salary, but still somehow always one unexpected bill away from stress, this video is for you. My name is Ely, and I spend way too much time thinking about how people in the US experience money psychologically. If you're someone who earns a normal income, maybe even more than you used to, but still doesn't feel financially secure, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need this conversation. Now, before getting into the psychology, let's just sit with the math for a second, because the math is actually the first place where things start to feel off. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median weekly earnings for a full-time worker in the US sits somewhere around $1,100, which works out to roughly $57,000 a year. That sounds like a livable number until you start doing the actual breakdown. After federal taxes, state taxes, depending on where someone lives, Social Security, and Medicare, that $57,000 might bring home closer to $43,000 to $45,000 net annually. Divide that by 12 months. Now figure out how far $3,600 a month actually goes in most American cities where average rent for a one-bedroom apartment has crossed $1,500, in some places $2,000 or more. Throw in a car payment. The average new car payment in the US is now over $700 a month according to Edmunds, plus insurance, groceries that have gone up significantly since 2020, a phone bill, utilities, and 1 or 2 subscriptions people forgot they were paying for. The math gets tight, really tight. Here's the thing, though. This script isn't about people making $57,000. It's about people making $80,000, $90,000, $100,000. People who by most measurements are doing well and still feeling exactly as financially anxious as they did 5 years ago when they were making a lot less. That's the puzzle worth solving. And the answer isn't inflation, even though inflation is real. It isn't taxes, even though the tax burden on middle-income Americans is significant. The core of it, the part that almost never gets talked about honestly, is psychological. It lives inside the brain, not inside the paycheck. Here's what most people don't realize. The brain doesn't experience money in absolute terms. It experiences money in relative terms. Meaning, the feeling of financial security isn't tied to a specific number. It's tied to the gap between what someone has and what they feel like they need. And here's the problem with that. That gap has a way of staying exactly the same no matter how much income grows, because the definition of need expands along with income. This is lifestyle creep. And it is one of the most well-documented, least discussed forces in personal finance. The concept was identified in behavioral economics research and has been explored by psychologists for decades. The basic mechanism is this. When income rises, spending rises at roughly the same rate, sometimes faster, so the net feeling of financial breathing room stays the same or actually gets worse. A 2023 report from the Federal Reserve found that roughly 37% of American adults would struggle to cover an unexpected $400 expense. Read that again, $400. And that number includes people across a wide income range, not just low earners. That's not a budgeting failure. That's a behavioral and psychological pattern playing out at scale. So what actually happens when income goes up? Think of it like this. Imagine financial security is a finish line. When someone is making $45,000, the finish line feels like it's at $70,000. Once they reach $70,000, the finish line quietly moves to $95,000. When they get to $95,000, it's already moved to $120,000. The finish line is always roughly the same distance ahead, no matter how fast someone runs. That's not a metaphor for ambition. That's a metaphor for a psychological trap. The technical term for part of this phenomenon is hedonic adaptation. It's the brain's tendency to return to a baseline level of emotional response regardless of positive or negative changes in circumstance. People win the lottery, feel euphoric for a few months, then return to roughly the same emotional baseline. People get a significant raise, feel relieved for a bit, then adjust their standard of living until the raise no longer feels like extra money. It just feels like normal. And then, interestingly, any threat to that new normal feels like loss, which is why someone making $90,000 can feel financially stressed in a way that actually feels more intense than when they were making $55,000. The stakes feel higher because the lifestyle they're now protecting is bigger. This is where it gets interesting, because the psychology doesn't stop at spending. It extends into comparison, which in the United States has its own particular flavor. American culture has a specific and relentless relationship with visible success. The car in the driveway, the neighborhood, the vacation photos, the kitchen renovation. Researchers have studied what's called social comparison theory since the 1950s, and what they've consistently found is that people evaluate their own financial well-being not against an objective standard, but against the people they see around them. And in the era of social media and algorithmic feeds, the reference group has expanded dramatically. Someone living in a mid-sized Midwestern city is now visually exposed, every single day, to the consumption habits of people in Manhattan, Los Angeles, Miami, and anywhere else that produces content. The comparison isn't just local anymore. It's national, and the brain doesn't always distinguish between what's real and what's curated. The American Psychological Association has repeatedly found in its annual Stress in America survey that money is the top source of stress for adults in this country. Not health, not relationships, money. And yet the conversation about why money remains stressful, even as incomes rise for many people, rarely goes deeper than spend less, save more. That advice is technically correct and practically useless for someone who doesn't understand the psychological machinery running underneath their financial decisions. Now you might be thinking, okay, but isn't some of this just the real cost of living going up? And yes, that's fair. Inflation has been real. Healthcare costs in the US are genuinely extraordinary. The average American family spends well over $20,000 a year on healthcare when premiums and out-of-pocket costs are combined. According to data from the Kaiser Family Foundation, housing costs have genuinely increased in most markets. These are structural pressures that aren't purely psychological. But here's the distinction worth making carefully. Structural cost increases explain some of the financial pressure. They don't explain why someone who got a $15,000 raise 2 years ago and had their expenses covered by their old salary is still living paycheck to paycheck today. The raise didn't go to healthcare. It went somewhere else. And usually, that somewhere else is a slow collection of choices that each seemed completely reasonable at the time. The nicer apartment because I'm finally earning enough to not live like that. The lease on a car that's $200 more per month because I work hard and I deserve reliable transportation. The gym membership that's actually good this time. The meal delivery service because cooking after a 10-hour day isn't realistic. The weekend trips that used to feel like luxuries but now feel like necessities because stress relief is health, right? Each one of those decisions is individually defensible. Collectively, they consume an entire raise before most people even realize it happened. And this is where identity enters the conversation, because money isn't just math. It never has been. Money in America is deeply tied to identity. What someone drives, where they live, where their kids go to school, what they wear, where they eat. These are all signals that get read, interpreted, and judged in a culture that has spent decades equating net worth with self-worth. And because of that, upgrading lifestyle with income isn't just a preference. For a lot of people, it's an unconscious act of self-protection. It's saying, I belong at this level. I've earned this. Don't put me back. That's psychological function, using spending to anchor identity and signal belonging. is incredibly powerful and incredibly expensive, and it's almost never conscious. That's what makes it so persistent. Here's a real-world example that might land differently. Two people start the same job at $60,000. Over 5 years, one of them gets incremental raises and ends up at $82,000. The other gets a promotion and jumps to $95,000. At year 6, the person making $95,000 is carrying more credit card debt than the person at $82,000. How? Because the promotion triggered a lifestyle adjustment that the slower raise path didn't. The jump felt significant. It felt like arrival. And arrival, in American culture, gets celebrated by spending. The problem is, arrival is never actually permanent. But the spending commitments that marked it often are. Now look, this isn't about judging spending. It's about understanding the mechanism so that it can be interrupted. Because the goal isn't to live small. The goal is to stop running on a treadmill that never moves forward regardless of how fast the speed gets turned up. So what does actually help? Because practical action matters just as much as understanding the problem. The first thing, and this one runs counter to almost everything popular personal finance advice says, is to define the number before the raise arrives, not after. Most people get a raise and then figure out what to do with it, which means the brain's default mode kicks in and the money gets absorbed into lifestyle almost immediately. The more effective move is to decide, in advance, what percentage of any income increase will be treated as untouchable. Some behavioral economists suggest treating at least half of any raise as if it doesn't exist, automating it directly into savings or retirement contributions before it ever hits a checking account. The key is pre-commitment. Willpower at the moment of spending is the weakest intervention. Systems built before the moment of temptation are far more durable. The second thing is to build what might be called a psychological safety fund, which is slightly different from an emergency fund in purpose, even if it's similar in structure. Research from the University of Exeter found that simply having a financial buffer, even a modest one, has a measurable effect on reducing anxiety and improving cognitive function. The goal of the emergency fund isn't just practical, it's neurological. A brain that knows there's a cushion doesn't activate the threat response to the same degree, and a brain that isn't in low-level threat mode makes consistently better financial decisions. Starting with $1,000, then building to 1 month of expenses, then 3 months, isn't just financial advice. It's mood management with math. The third thing is to actively audit the comparison environment. This sounds abstract, but it's concrete in practice. The feed someone consumes, the people they spend time with, the media they engage with, these all calibrate the baseline for what normal looks like. If the comparison group is consistently living at a higher consumption level, the brain reads the current situation as insufficient even when it objectively isn't. That doesn't mean cutting off all aspirational content forever. It means being intentional about curating inputs and occasionally asking, is this making me feel motivated or just inadequate? Those are different feelings with very different behavioral outcomes. The fourth thing is to stop treating lifestyle decisions as permanent before they've been lived for 6 months. One of the most consistent patterns in consumer psychology is that people systematically overestimate how much a lifestyle upgrade will improve how they feel. The nicer apartment, the newer car, the higher-end grocery store, they all provide a bump. And then they become the new normal, and the bump disappears. Knowing this in advance doesn't make someone immune to it, but it can slow down the decision, create a pause, and sometimes that pause is enough to ask, is this worth the ongoing cost, or just the one-time thrill of getting it? Here's what it all comes down to. The feeling of financial insecurity, the low hum of worry that doesn't go away even when income improves, is not primarily a math problem. It's a calibration problem. The brain is constantly comparing actual resources against expected resources, and it's doing that comparison inside a culture that continuously pushes expected resources higher. The math matters. Budgets matter. Savings rates matter. But they matter less than most people think if the psychological baseline keeps moving. The most financially stable people, not the wealthiest, but the most stable, tend to share one trait that has nothing to do with income level. They've stopped outsourcing their definition of enough to the culture around them and built it from the inside out. They know their actual number. They know what a stable month looks like, what a comfortable life costs for them specifically, And they've stopped letting that number be quietly renegotiated by every new car commercial, every renovated kitchen on a home improvement show, every colleague who just booked a trip to Portugal. That's not deprivation. That's clarity. And clarity, as it turns out, is one of the most underrated financial assets someone can have. The salary isn't the problem. The story being told about what the salary should make possible, that's where the work is. And that work is entirely internal, which means it doesn't require a higher income, a better economy, or a different set of circumstances. It just requires deciding to look clearly at the machinery that's been running quietly in the background and making a different choice about what gets to drive the next decision. That's where financial security actually starts, not on the next pay stub,